Tarkir Dragonstorm is coming out soon, and I think we can all agree that it's sick. I appreciate the obvious love that went into building a world that feels sincere and cared for. But I'm scared of some of the cards they are releasing. A few of these look absolutely insane, and the one that's already gathered a ton of attention is good old Ugin. Ugin, Eye of the Storm, is a 7-mana colorless planeswalker with 7 loyalty that, when he's cast, exiles up to 1 target permanent that's 1 or more colors. This is already a very powerful effect, as it's a cast trigger exile removal, making it incredibly difficult to interact with. A counterspell that only hits Ugin doesn't do anything. It would need to be able to stifle the cast trigger itself. Stifle stonks are on the rise, I'm telling you. Also, Whirlwind Denial. I'm liking that card more and more as time passes. Anyways, then once Ugin hits the board, whenever we cast a colorless spell, we get to do this again. In a colorless deck that has access to a lot of cheap mana rocks or some eggs, triggering this repeatedly is not difficult at all, and that lets us clear out most problematic permanents our opponents might have. And that's all before we even get to his loyalty abilities. His first is simple. It's a +2 that draws a card and gains us free life. Nothing crazy, but a very nice tool in a stable board state, which Ugin can create with his passive. Then, as a +0, Ugin can add 3 colorless mana to our mana pool. This helps set up those big removal turns, where we chain artifact into artifact, attaching a free utter end to all of them. Finally, his ultimate is a -11 that lets us search our deck for any number of colorless non-lands, and then lets us cast them without paying their mana cost. If Ugin is still alive at that point, then each of those also triggers his passive, guaranteeing a victory from a guaranteed victory. Casting a deck of colorless spells should close out any match. Ugin is kind of insane. Most planeswalkers struggle in Commander, because finding an opportunity to cast them, which won't result in their immediate demise, is difficult. Having 3 opponents just adds a lot of creatures to the board that can attack them, but also there's this interesting phenomenon where in Commander you have 40 life, right? So when you deal a little bit of damage to a player, it doesn't actually feel like it matters that much. But when you deal a little bit of damage to a planeswalker, it dies. So players want to attack planeswalkers because it feels like they're making more progress there. I think this is just a theory. Anyways, usually the best way to set up a planeswalker is to cast a board wipe first. However, most board wipes and most planeswalkers cost a good amount of mana, so doing this both in the same turn can be difficult. Ugin, however, sets up for his own board wipe. Just by himself, he gets rid of the scariest thing our opponents have, and then we can use his +0 in combination with any variety of colorless spells to snipe out the remaining problems. At least in theory. In practice, I worry that Ugin needs a very specific deck to function. We need colorless spells in hand to trigger him, the most common and applicable of which would be mana rocks, as they can be used to pay the cost for additional spells in that same turn. But Ugin is also 7 mana. We need to play the mana rocks to even be able to cast them at a reasonable time. Anything else we have in hand will just be a one-time removal, unlikely to chain into further spells, which is reasonable, but not the same as actually clearing the board. If all Ugin ends up being is 2 utter ends, then that's just not that good. I think it's likely that Ugin will still require a preceding board wipe to be properly utilized, and he'll be very strong if that is properly set up. But at 7 mana, he better be strong. I'm not saying that he's a bad card. I think Ugin is probably gonna end up as one of the better planeswalkers in the format, but that still only leaves him as the best of a really bad group of cards. Now, I should also mention that I don't know anything about other formats. From what I've gathered, many speculate that he'll be great at Modern because you can like Tron land into him, but I don't know much about Modern. That format is too spooky for me. I'm just a Commander dummy having a good time, so that's all I'm discussing. And I feel like in Commander, I'm not actually vibing with Ugin that much. If you've enjoyed the video so far, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. We'll definitely appreciate that. Thank you. There is a different dragon though that I think is going to be one of the nastiest commanders in the game with clear CEDH potential, and that is Tevell. Tevell, Arbiter of Virtue is a 5-mana 6/6 with flying and lifelink. It also gives all of our spells Delve, meaning we can reduce their mana costs by exiling cards from our graveyard. And finally, whenever we cast a spell while Tevell is on the board, we lose life equal to that spell's mana value. Wait, wait, hold on a second. That's actually kind of ass, isn't it? Okay, giving all of our spells Delve is fantastic, but making everything we cast have an equal life cost, that's going to add up really quickly, isn't it? We need expensive spells so that delving is useful, but we want cheap spells so we don't nuke ourselves into oblivion. I'm sure there's a list that makes sense of it, but that's just asking for a lot. What am I even talking about here? Oh, right. Sorry. That's the wrong Tevell. I just got distracted by it being a big fancy mythic. No, I'm actually talking about the secondary commander from the Sultai Precon deck. Tevell, the Balanced Scale. Nothing balanced about this boy. This Tevell is a 4-mana 4/4 with flying. Whenever he attacks, we mill 3 cards, and then get to return a land from our graveyard directly to the battlefield, tapped. This is already fantastic. While Tevell doesn't do anything right away, leaving him vulnerable to removal, once we get to start attacking, that is quickly made up for. Commanders that generate land advantage are quite resilient to removal because they can somewhat circumvent command attacks. The lands they ramp pay for the recast, at which point they start ramping more lands yet again. Milling 3 cards is also a noteworthy effect in a Sultai deck, which is a color combination that excels at using the graveyard for a variety of purposes. If this was all that Tevell did, I would already be okay calling it a good commander. But of course, it doesn't end there. Tevell also says that whenever 1 or more cards leave our graveyard, we create a 2/2 black zombie druid creature token. This is absurd. Just by himself, when Tevell attacks, we mill 3, ramp a land, and get a 2/2. But of course, it doesn't have to end there. Tevell's zombie creation doesn't have any restrictions, and it doesn't even specify that the cards have to be exiled, they just have to leave the graveyard. Reanimation and hand or deck recursion both work just fine. There are so many disgusting synergies with Tevell. At its most basic, we got Reanimate. Bring a guy back to life, grab a zombie on the way out. But to have reanimation targets, we first have to fill up our graveyard. And for that, we have cards like Life from the Loam. Life from the Loam is a 2-mana sorcery with Dredge 3, which means if we would draw a card while it's in our graveyard, we can mill 3 cards instead, and then return it to our hand. Dredge triggers Tevell. Life from the Loam sits in our graveyard, and then we return it to our hand, making a zombie. But Life from the Loam also has an actual effect, being that we can return up to 3 lands from our graveyard to our hand, making another zombie at the same time. There are so many cards that have favorable interactions here. Moortender and Deathrite Shaman exile cards from graveyards to make mana, and now also make zombies. Decaying Soil requires us to exile a card from our graveyard every turn. This is intended to be a cost, but just becomes another zombie. Effects that manipulate 1 card at a time are especially effective, as they create a zombie every single time. Titan's Nest is a 4-mana enchantment that lets us surveil in our upkeep and also allows us to exile a card from our graveyard to add a colorless mana. With Tevell in play, we generate mana alongside zombies. I think you get the idea. Tevell reminds me a lot of Edgar Markov. Play a vampire, get a vampire. Just in his case, it's do Sultai stuff, get a zombie. Sure, he doesn't have Eminence, but he ramps the land every turn, so mana isn't really that much of a problem. Tevell's complete lack of restrictions makes him just insane, and this is made even more pronounced because the tokens he creates have relevant creature types. I don't think I need to explain why zombie is a good type to have. The Gravecrawler loops have already begun and are powering a small village in Italy, but Druid is actually surprisingly relevant as well. Guildleaf Archdruid and Seton Croson Protector are fairly incredible cards that are usually limited in their usability because Druid is just not a particularly supported creature type. But with Tevell pooping out druids all over the place, yeah, tap 7 of them, steal everybody's lands. Why not? I sincerely believe that Tevell the Balanced Scale will be a new, premier Sultai good stuff commander, as he provides and enables everything the color wants on a great 4/4 flying body. Just an amazing creature. But I'm never gonna build it. I'm putting together already the song unending and laser beaming anything in sight with my 600 lands in play while flickering the boys, and nobody ever gets to play. Get wrecked, everybody. No, I'm not doing that, but it would be funny. Alright, it may seem like I'm making a bit of an early call here, but here's the thing. Last week, a friend of mine proxied a Tevell deck, and he explicitly set out to make it shit. It was a Druids deck. It wasn't even a Sultai good stuff deck at all. It's very specifically a Druid deck. It was meant to be bad, and it still went absolutely nuts because Tevell just works with everything. Anything Sultai tries to do, Tevell just amplifies to a degree that it becomes insane. This card is incredible. I know, it's not as flashy. I know it doesn't look as scary as many of the other commanders that have already been revealed. But I'm firmly convinced that this card is the best of the set. At least it better be. If there's something better than Tevell, oh my god, I am terrified. I do not want there to be a card better than Tevell. That would be a problem. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. I would definitely appreciate that. And let me know which of the new cards excites you the most. As I said, I like the Laser Beam Dragon. I like having a lot of lands in play and then just kind of like killing things. That sounds like a lot of fun. I like ETB commanders, and this is a commander that's all ETB, so I'm down for that. Anyways, I'll see you guys. Goodbye.